Welcome back to the Boys in the Booth podcast, a new episode. This is episode 228. Welcome to it. And in this one, we are going to kick it off with Core 4 stories, of course, and then talk about a blockbuster of a trade that happened on Friday night. So before that, let's get into Core 4 stories, and we'll tee up our nice intro here.
Core 4.
Core 4.
Core 4.
Core 4.
Core 4.
Core 4. Core 4 is
Core 4. And
Core 4.
All right, again, hope you like that new intro for Core 4 Stories, our segment that we use to kick off every episode of the podcast. So let's get into this first item here, boys, and some tough news for your New Jersey Devils case. Jacob Markstrom out 4 to 6 weeks with an MCL sprain. Justin Brazeau, I believe it was, of the Boston Bruins, running into him earlier in the week in a game between the Devils and the Bruins. Now, thankfully, the Devils have Jake Allen, who looked pretty good in that game on Saturday night against Montreal. The Devils got that victory in overtime, of course. Jack Hughes with the game winner. But Case, we'll start with you on this. Just your thoughts on this and feelings about the Devils and their goaltending situation moving forward.
Yeah, I think I'm less worried about the Devils' goaltending situation, and I'm more just like upset for Jacob Markstrom, who is having a Vezina caliber season, and it's like this is definitely going to put a damper on that and probably let Hellebuck run away with it. But I mean, in terms of the Devils' situation, they went out and got 2 goalies for this season for a reason, in case one of them goes down. Jake Allen is very capable in the net. He's put out great games for them so far. The stats don't quite show it, but really, when you look at the eye test watching him, he's solid back there. Not worried about that. They'll call up Poulter or Dawes, but they're probably not going to see the net unless things get dire. And it's kind of the best time of year to have an injury to your goalie if you need to have an injury to your goalie, because they are going to be off for the break for the Four Nations tournament. And again, feel bad for Jacob Markstrom because now he's going to miss that. So That all sucks.
yeah, and likely the starter of Team Sweden at the Four Nations face-off, not set in stone because there are some other good goaltenders there, but Markstrom's having a great season, so he was probably going to start at least a few games at that tournament. So that's a bummer for him and a bummer for Team Sweden too, because like I said, he's having a great year, so that sucks for them. I saw the play. Oh, God, it looked like his ankle just exploded.
That was hard to watch.
Oh, that was
It
bad.
wasn't even his ankle.
I know, and so what was...
It looked bad, but it was
MCL
knee
sprain.
I mean, it's all kind of connected, right? When one twists backwards, you'd like to think that, the knee isn't doing too well. But yeah, so that was tough to watch. Tough for him. But like you guys have both mentioned, they've got Jake Allen there. There's a reason they brought in 2 goalies. Goaltending is not an issue, really, in Jersey. So it's, and Case, you're totally right. If you're going to miss a guy, this is the time to do it. Bringing this back to the Maple Leafs like I always do, Stolars is a guy who's been out now for about 5 weeks now. There are talks of him playing a game or 2 before the Four Nations break, and it's like, I don't really know. It kind of just seems like maybe you give him an extra 2 weeks. Like, what's the difference, right? Because every team in the league is going to use that 2 weeks to, have some of their players get back up and healthy, and I think it'll be a really good thing for, the competitiveness down the stretch in the season, especially with how tight it is in the East in particular when most teams are fully healthy. So I think that 2-week stretch is going to be really important. So you're right, Case. Like if you're going to miss a goalie, you might as well miss him when no NHL games are being played.
They might be missing him. Let's say it's 6 weeks, call it March 7th, he's back. They'll miss him for 6 games.
Yeah, that's like a week and a half. Tournament ends on Feb 20th, I think. So that's not bad. 2 weeks, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, not too worried about it there. Devils are also currently one of the best defensive teams in the league. Obviously, Markstrom's helping on that goals against average for sure, but they've also allowed very few high danger shots or chances in the grand scheme of things. So I think that they'll button things up, and I don't know, maybe this will force them to start scoring some goals again.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And important to note, too, that Samuel Urson of the Philadelphia Flyers will take Markstrom's spot on Team Sweden at the upcoming Four Nations face-off. All right, item number 2, guys. We'll stick with the Swedish theme here. Elliot Friedman reporting during Saturday night headlines on Hockey Night in Canada over the weekend that the Buffalo Sabres are showing a lot of interest in Elias Pettersson of the Vancouver Canucks. There was a chance that Pettersson could have ended up on the Carolina Hurricanes. That's obviously not going to happen now, and we'll get into that a little later on here. But Pettersson and Buffalo, I look at this and, you know, it would give the Sabres a star player to kind of change up their mix and breathe some new life into a team that's had a very tough season. There's obviously the Swedish connection with a guy like Rasmus Dahlin, but at the same time, I don't know, like he has really struggled since signing that long-term extension with Vancouver, but certainly could be a guy who could benefit from a change of scenery. So Pettersson connected to the Sabres and possibly that team being a favorite. What do we think?
Yeah, I don't know. My initial gut reaction was like, oh, more of the same in Buffalo, but he is a bona fide stud. So I think maybe the outcome would be a little different here instead of just adding more and more scoring wingers. I wonder if that is the best move for Elias Pettersson, considering he is struggling to score in particular. I mean, I don't know if moving to a struggling team is the best for your career in that regards. Like, I feel like you'd want to also be moved to a Carolina, like this trade we're going to talk about later. But obviously, this would change things big time for Buffalo. They need that star up front. They have the stars on the back end. They have a core building in defense. The forwards, they just kind of have a lot of guys who are on the edge, and we know what Pettersson can do. So this would be huge for them. I got to urge Vancouver to stop and not do this. Don't trade at either of them, really, but definitely not Pettersson in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if you're the Sabres, I think you have to jump all over this if there's mutual interest between the two teams here. I don't know what the return would look like. It's probably involving Dylan Cousins, you would think, going the other way, because his name has been rumored now over the last couple months, which, like, I don't mind. I was critical of the Sabres mentioning that that this guy was in trade talks, Dylan Cousins, that they were shopping him or whatever, because, like, what is the plan? Like, this is a legit player, 60 to 80 point guy. I think he tops out as. He works hard. He's playing on your second line. Like, he's obviously has to get better in a bunch of different ways, but he's still super young. So why are you entertaining trading him? Well, if this is the kind of return that you're looking for to bring in a star player like Elias Pettersson, who can get 100 points, who can, be a top scorer and the best player on a team, who is committed defensively as well, then I think it's a perfect return. I think you need to add more on Buffalo's side to get it done. Mm-hmm. But I think that totally changes the look of the Sabres. And Case, to your point about whether it's, good or bad for Pettersson to do this, he already has locked up and made his money is kind of what he should be thinking. He's already signed his ticket. So now he should be, just looking for a fresh start if they decide that that's who they want to trade, if it is Elias Pettersson. Again, like, we probably are on the same page. We don't agree that they should trade Pettersson, but if they do, and Pettersson wants a fresh start, why not go to Buffalo, mentor some of the younger players, and come out on the other side of that rebuild? It's going to happen eventually. They're eventually going to get through this, 5th or 6th or 7th or 15th rebuild, and they're going to come out on the other side and they're going to win games in succession. And, over the course of an 82 game season, they're going to win a lot of games one of these years. So why not, if you're Pettersson, come to this situation, mentor some of these guys, take the reins of this team and say, hey, I want to be the guy. I'm good enough to be the guy. It was just a bad situation in Vancouver, and here I am in Buffalo, scoring 120 points and leading this team. I think it would be a perfect fit. I just don't know if both teams are super interested. I don't know.
I think if Pettersson's ready to grab the horns and be the guy on a team, he should do it in Vancouver.
Like, yeah, fair, but as long as JT Miller's there, it's not going to happen, right? Like,
Yeah.
if so,
No, well,
I mean, that's the
I have
problem.
some comments about JT Miller later, so
Okay.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, no, it's one of those things I wanted to bring up. One of those interesting headlines from the weekend from Elliot Friedman, and obviously there's the Swedish connection with Pedersen and Rasmus Dahlin. I think is important to note. And Buffalo has the pieces, whether it's current players on that roster, like a Dylan Cousins or whoever, picks, prospects, you name it, and could really excite the fan base. So
Well,
anyway,
they're
wanted
probably
to
going to be talking in a
touch on
couple
that.
weeks here. I'm sure Dahlin will be, doing his best to get in Pedersen's ear and say, "Hey, like, have you heard the news? Apparently, our teams are talking. Come
Yeah,
on over." You know.
who knows what
I didn't know Dahlin spoke, but yeah, he's doing that.
Yeah, I thought he just cross-checked. That's what I thought he did.
or got cross-checked by
Yeah.
Austin
After throwing
Matthews
two or three.
whoever.
After throwing
Anyway,
2 or 3.
all right, switching gears a little bit here for item number 3, Gary Bettman's future as commissioner of the NHL. This was on 32 Thoughts on Friday, and how the NHL is starting to be informed to prepare or start to prepare for the eventual retirement of Gary Bettman as commissioner of the league. And we're probably looking at that in the next couple of years. There's a new collective bargaining agreement that needs to get done, a few more boxes to check. But it's clear that Bettman is slowly starting to wind down, or is at least thinking about it over the next couple of years, and wants to leave the NHL in good standing and leave the business in good standing as well. So, thoughts on this, the future of Gary Bettman?
Yeah, you see some videos of him in the league, and I feel like they're going to be in black and white. He's been around so long; it's longer than you think. I am a bit of a pessimist when it comes to politics and commissioners of sporting leagues, and I always think that we always want someone new and we always want something different, and I'm always afraid that it's going to be worse, and it always can be worse, and sometimes you don't know if you have it good or not. That being said, if Gary Bettman's leaving soon and they replace him, they have to. This is best case Ontario for Canada, because boy, it seems like he hates this country and everything to do with hockey in Canada. So maybe this results in the expansion coming north of the border. I know that the owners all want expansions. They get $1 million in their pocket every time there's a new team added, and it's just good for the league. Everyone wants the expansion. Salary cap's going up. It's just always seems like Canada's not even in the conversation for another team. So maybe that's where we go with this.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't really know what Friedman means by the NHL is preparing for a world without Gary Bettman, because he's still the commissioner. He's not going to be stepping down for at least a couple of years. I think most people are agreeable to that sort of timeline. So I don't really know exactly what he means by that, other than to say, hey, this guy who is like, what, 75 plus, like, isn't going to last forever. So I don't know. I saw this swirling on, like Instagram and stuff, clearly coming from Elliot, and I just didn't know what to make of it. So I don't really have much comment other than to say, like or hate Gary Bettman, he has done a few good things and a few bad things for the league. One of the good things is that he's clearly grown the game entirely. Like, since taking over in 1993, he has expanded the league by a bunch of teams, and the league and the product on the ice is better off for it. Now, a bad thing that Gary Bettman did that, a lot of teams don't like, a lot of fans don't like, is the hard cap, right? So that's one of the things that he will go down for in history as being known for, as the man who invented the hard salary cap in the NHL and locked out the league multiple times. So listen, there are good and bad things about Gary Bettman. He's currently in the Hockey Hall of Fame as a builder, despite his current job title as the commissioner of the league. So, he's going to go down in history as one of the best, honestly, I think, because he's been doing it for so long. He's done some positive things. Yeah, there's some negative things in there. The whole Canada not winning since 93 and not expanding here despite multiple expansions. But yeah, overall, like Gary Bettman's tenure, yeah, might be coming up. I don't really know what to make of that news.
Well, yeah, I do. Like, it makes sense to me. I think it's just, the NHL needs to start thinking about a transition plan, a succession plan, if you will, whether it's Bill Daley, deputy commissioner, currently in that role, of course, taking over for Gary Bettman when he decides to step away. So
he's 72, by the way. I just looked it up. He's 72. And one thing I will say as well is, Gary's NHL has had a similar mindset all throughout, right? Like, they want to make the owners money. They want the most amount of parity in the league as possible. And they will not follow gimmicky trends like we've seen in other leagues, particularly the NBA with, expanded playoffs, things like that. So, like, I don't think changing the head of the league is going to really change anything. I think it'll be one of his buddies, like maybe it's a Daly who takes over, and it'll be the same sort of principles that Gary Bettman has built this league on. So I really don't think there will be much change no matter who comes up next.
Go ahead and clip that for when George Parros takes over as NHL commissioner and
God,
Chad absolutely regrets what he says.
Well, I mean, listen.
I mean, the guy has like an economics degree and has like crazy SAT scores, and he's actually quite a smart guy despite his stupid play and hatred of the Leafs, and making sure that people get hurt and no one gets suspended for it, and people get suspended for hurting no one.
And I think he's an Ivy League guy too. So like what? But whatever. If George Parros is the next guy, which it will not be, but imagine
that's a joke. I don't think it's going to be it. But
yeah. But imagine it would be the same. Yeah, it would be the same sort of principles, though. I really do believe that, where like Gary has been leading for so long, it's a top-down organization. Whoever takes over next is not going to come in with any brilliant new ideas or gimmicky stuff or a brand new salary cap that's not a hard cap. Like, I just don't think much will change. So that's all I
just think that people expect some sort of change, but they have to understand that businesses want to make money. So it's always going to be about the owners making money. I'm kind of with you. Like, I saw the headline as well, and I was like, okay, I'm not going to lose any sleep about this.
It's like, if the Walmart CEO was transitioned to someone new today, it's like Walmart's not going to start selling cars. Like, it's going to be the same thing, the exact same thing. They're going to want to make money by selling what they currently sell. And in the NHL's case, it's the best product you can put on the ice at a certain time. So I don't think it'll change much no matter who the next GM is. So yeah, when I saw that info, I was just like, okay, like, sure, that's news, I guess, but I don't know. He's 72. Like, of course that's going to happen. He's going to transition eventually and ride off into the sunset.
It's been around since 93.
Yeah, and when was the last time a Canadian team won the Cup? Case.
Yeah.
1993.
93.
Yeah. That would be my only complaint as a hockey fan and a fan of the NHL. The fact that we've gone so long in Canada without a winner here.
Right.
But other than that, I mean, I love everything going on with the NHL.
Yeah, but can you really, if you're not a conspiracy theorist wearing a tinfoil hat, can you really blame Gary Bettman for Canadian teams not winning?
No, unless they like balance salary cap based off tax brackets and stuff like that. But that's just an absolute nightmare.
Yeah, and I don't know, you guys probably didn't hear this. Last week, Gary Bettman went on the Real Kipper and Bourne show, and Justin Bourne asked him directly. He said, okay, we know that there are some advantages to living in tax-free states like Florida, like Nashville, whatever. They're able to sign players for fewer dollars than teams in higher tax states. So like California or New York or all of the Canadian ones, particularly Ontario and Quebec. So, and Justin Bourne said, what about a pre-tax salary cap? Would that work? And it was shut down so fast by Gary
of course
Bettman.
it was.
It is not something that the league will ever entertain. So I think we just need to, stop beating that drum, because it's just not going to happen.
Yeah. No, exactly. All right, moving on from that to our final item here, and this is just one of those like feel-good hockey items. So, 35-year-old Sam Gagner, over 1,000 games in the NHL. Of course, we'll never forget that 8-point performance that he had years ago with the Edmonton Oilers. We've talked about it and posted clips from it on this show before. But he still wants to play hockey, and he signed a PTO with the AHL's Belleville Senators last week and had an assist in 2 games over the weekend. So just one of those feel-good kind of stories that we look at from the week that was.
Yeah, he's a interesting case, that Sam Gagner. Just like great production early on in his career, and then became like maybe the poster of quadruple A players, and just kind of like way too good for the AHL. Can't crack a top 6 and doesn't really suit to play in a bottom 6 of the NHL. So he just kind of bounces around. It's interesting, but I mean, at the end of the day, he's got over 1,000 games. He's got over 500 points. It's been a career. He's been good.
Yeah. Totally. And like half a point a game, more than half a point a game through over 1,000 games is nothing to scoff at. So the fact that, he didn't have a contract going into this season, I mean, I'm not going to say it's crazy, but like you'd think that a team out there would want some veteran leadership and some experience, but it is what it is. Now he's playing for the B-Sens. I see he's got an assist in the 2 games that he's played this year. So, good for him. Like a good comeback story. He's been doing it forever. Hope this isn't a disrespectful comparison, because there are a lot of guys out there who I think kind of fit the mold, as Case was describing, as sort of, too good for the AHL, not quite good enough for the NHL. But a guy I think of when I think of Sam Gagner is another player, Harp, who I think you like quite a bit. It's Tyler Ennis. Like, had some good production in the NHL in his career, but then towards the end of it was kind of bouncing up and down, and wasn't able to bring anything more than just that raw production. Like, wasn't really a great defensive player. So, if you're a contending team, like, sure, you'd like half a point a game. But towards the end of your career, if you're a Sam Gagner, Tyler Ennis, whatever, the list goes on, you're probably not quite as close to that production anymore. Plus, you're not bringing some of the other stuff that some younger players do. So it's a bit of a comparison. I hope that wasn't a disrespectful one, but that's who I think of when I think of Sam Gagner.
No,
just absolute legends.
That's a good comparison. One. Harper, show him your Ennis tattoo, Tyler Ennis tattoo.
It's actually on his forehead under his Bills hat, right next to his Eagles tattoo.
Big Bills fan. But one thing I'll say about Gagner that I respect is the grind and the like commitment to stay within the NHL. He's a guy that could have went overseas to Europe, probably would lead the KHL in points randomly, like Josh Levo, and make a ton of money playing in Sweden or Russia or Germany, wherever he wants to go. But he is committed to stick around in the NHL and has bounced to a lot of teams. One thing to point out, though, is only 11 playoff games played. So I guess there's a
interesting.
That's part of his game he doesn't bring. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, for the Flyers and the Blue Jackets. I don't even remember him playing for the Flyers at all. Like, that's
I do. I don't really remember him being a Blue Jacket, and that is an interesting stat.
81 games in Columbus. How do you not remember that?
Yeah, for whatever reason, I don't. But that is interesting. Only the 11 playoff games for a guy that played over 1,000 games, and we see that every now and then. Look at Jeff Skinner. Jeff Skinner, over 1,000 games in the NHL, hasn't played a single playoff game. But keep in mind that with Gagner, I mean, he was on a lot of those just god-awful Oilers teams before they got McDavid and Draisaitl, and the list goes on.
Yeah, from 2007 to 2010, basically. And then they started getting their first overall picks. But yeah, 3 years of just nonsense in Edmonton there.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, just a really good hockey story. A guy who wants to keep playing, and certainly love that. And just one more player I want to bring up that, I was kind of sad that he didn't get a contract. One of those guys that just still wanted to play and try to give it his all is Phil Kessel. Like, I was kind of surprised that he didn't at least get an AHL contract in the offseason. So I thought of him as well when thinking about other players that kind of fit the mold of a Sam Gagner.
Yeah, same.
I don't know this, but I imagine this is the conversation and how it went with Phil in an AHL contract. Phil, would you like to sign with 20 of these AHL teams? No. Like, I don't imagine him looking to play in the AHL.
No, it'd probably be like, nah, I'm good. I'm fine.
I heard their concessions are not very good.
Good one, Randy. Good one. You guys seen that clip? Have you guys not seen that clip?
Well,
my God.
Yeah, talking about Randy Carlisle. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that one. Yeah,
Phil.
I will say, too, Jack Eichel's imitations of him are pretty entertaining as well.
Yeah.
So anyway, all right, that's Core 4 Stories for this week's episode. And now let's get into the main meat and potatoes here. And guys, the term blockbuster deal gets thrown around quite a bit in professional sports in general, not just in hockey. But this is an absolute blockbuster that we saw on Friday night. So here we go. Let's break it down. The Colorado Avalanche sending pending unrestricted free agent and superstar winger Mikko Rantanen to the Carolina Hurricanes on Friday night in exchange for Martin Necas having a very good season, Jack Drury, kind of a top 9, bottom 6 forward, a second and a fourth in 2025 and 2026, respectively, also going to Colorado. Then you have Chicago playing the third-party broker in this deal, sending Taylor Hall to Carolina, and Chicago receiving a third-round pick for retaining 50% of Mikko Rantanen's $9.25 million cap hit. So, guys, just an absolute whopper of a trade that we got at the start of the weekend here on Friday night. I was doing the Braves game when this news came out, and just couldn't believe it. And I'm sure that you two, as well as a lot of people in hockey circles, including members of the Colorado Avalanche, as we know, were shocked by this deal. So let's just have a discussion about it, what this means for both teams, and kind of a grade for everybody involved here.
We interrupt this podcast to tell you about one of our favorite partners, Sign Up Expert. If you're a sports bettor, whether it's brand new, casual, or hardcore, listen very carefully because this ad is for you. Guys, line shopping for the best odds matters, and that's why any profitable sports bettor needs to be using multiple sports books to maximize their profits. Thankfully, there has never been a better time to get signed up, and we are here to connect you with the best promotions industry-wide. When you use our link at signupexpert.com/boysinthebooth, you can get access to all of the top sports books in your region, along with a review of each platform and its unique benefits. Most importantly, all of these sports books have valuable sign-up offers for new users. And when you register through our link, you will automatically receive the top offer at each one, allowing you to start line shopping with an enhanced bankroll. Guys, it's simple. When you use multiple sports books, you ensure that you can always access the best available odds, which is key to successful and profitable sports betting. So, if you want to take advantage of these incredible benefits and support our brand at the same time, please consider signing up for your next sports book through our link in the description below, signupexpert.com/boysinthebooth. If you're planning on signing up for a new sportsbook anyways, you might as well use our link and support the boys. So, one more time, that's signupexpert.com/boysinthebooth. This podcast is sponsored by SeatGeek, the absolute best ticket app out there. SeatGeek takes the confusion out of buying tickets, making it quick and easy to get the best deals to tickets at your favorite sporting event. SeatGeek does this awesome thing where they score each ticket out of 10 based on its value, so you know whether you're getting a good or a bad deal. Last time I got tickets to see the Devils play, I first saw red tickets. I waited it out, monitored the price in-app, and once I saw green, I pulled the trigger. SeatGeek makes it that easy. And here's the best part. SeatGeek has completely hooked us up. Boys in the Booth listeners get $20 off their first purchase on SeatGeek with the promo code BOYSINTHEBOOTH in all caps. Click the link in our description to download the app, and remember to get your discounted tickets using the code BOYSINTHEBOOTH in all caps. Get great seats for a fraction of the cost with SeatGeek. Yeah, I was absolutely flabbergasted when I heard about this trade and had immediate dread in my heart when this trade happened, because I wanted Rantanen to stay the hell away from the East, and especially the Metro, and especially Carolina, who the Devils at the moment will be playing in the playoffs. God, this sucks. Everyone has always said that Carolina is like a stud away from being just the best team in the NHL. So this is just absolute dreadful for everyone in the Metro. And I couldn't even believe that Colorado went ahead and traded Rantanen. I know that they're afraid to lose him for nothing. I get that. But, sign and trade or something after the season's done. There's got to be just something they could have done, because you're trading a top, 5, 7 forward?
At least 10. Yeah, at least 10.
In the league.
Top
in the
10
last
for
5
sure.
years, he's 4th in points and he's 5th in goals. Like, the guy is just consistently a stud year in and year out, and is McKinnon's right-hand man. They've been on a line constantly. The points they have together is just astronomical. So now you're going in there and telling McKinnon that you're trading his guy. It's like, McKinnon loses his right-hand man, and now Aho gets his best bud to play with. It's wild to me. It's my initial thoughts.
Yeah, my initial thought, Case, similar to you. I was just like, what the hell? Like, this, I think, is the biggest trade we've seen since we've started covering the podcast. Maybe the biggest trade we've seen, like, in the last decade. I know the Kachuk and Huberdeau one was huge, but this is bigger, right? Like, this has to be a bigger, like, at least for the shock value, the type of player that's going back in return. Like, Mikko Rantanen, players like that just don't get traded. Like, it's impossible to move.
I wish I wrote down the stat when I saw it. I'm not going to have the full stat here, but it's like the first time over a point per game players have been traded for each other this late in the season since like 19 whatever. Like, I don't remember the year, but it doesn't happen. It has not happened in the salary cap era.
Yeah. Case, in the last 5 years, as you brought up, Rantanen's 4th in points behind only McDavid, Draisaitl, and McKinnon, dude. Like, this is a sick player, true power forward. And who would have thought? I saw this floating around. Who would have thought that after the Avs won the cup, the 3 big boys on that team, McKinnon, Rantanen, and Landeskog, would never play a single game, all 3 of them together again? How crazy is that? Like, when they won the cup, they must have thought, oh, we've got like 3 more of these coming. Like, look at our squad. We've got Cale Makar. Like, they figured out their goaltending this year. And this year they're also saying maybe Rantanen or maybe Landeskog rather is coming back. Like, they are set up great. And now all of a sudden the Robin to McKinnon's Batman is gone. Like, I know Natchez is a good player. He was leading the league for the first, 2 months of the season, but he's just not the same type of player. And I understand why they did it, for the security, because they didn't think they would be able to get Rantanen signed. But to that, I ask Joe Sakic and company, do you not think he could have pushed a little bit harder? Like, this, Mikko Rantanen has known nothing other than the Colorado Avalanche and the success that you've had with the Colorado Avalanche. He's best buds with Nate McKinnon. Like, don't you think you could have figured something out if you just pushed a little harder? Is he going to want $14 million? Sure. Why not pay him? Why not pay him? Like, it makes no sense to me.
They say that it's because they've set an internal cap of Nathan McKinnon. That's
Boo.
like the cap. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
Wrong.
I mean, you signed him like a couple seasons to that contract before an astronomical salary cap increase. The same thing happened in Edmonton, and they went, "Hey, Draisaitl, here's $1 billion." And you know who's not complaining about that right now? Is Connor McDavid. He doesn't give a shit about that money. He is just happy to have Draisaitl leading the league in goals. So I don't. If it's because you don't want to pay a guy on your team more than your best player, come on.
Do this case, set an internal cap based on percentage of the cap.
Yeah.
The maximum salary cap is something that has fluctuated since it was introduced, right? It has gone up and up and up. Then it stayed flat for a few years during COVID, and now it's going up and up and up again. Next season, it has been rumored to jump around $9 million, right? And with this upcoming CBA negotiation, it could be settled for the next 3 to 5 years of the cap, that is. Like, meaning you know the number of the cap for the next 3 years. That would be phenomenal. It would be astronomically high, at least by all projections, over the next 3 years. So, like, I just don't understand what the rush was. It seemed like such a panic move from Colorado. And if you're Carolina and you've got Eric Tulsky, who just took over this team, you know, his first season as GM, started off writing blogs, by all accounts is a total hockey nerd, okay, never played at a high level like all these other GMs. He's an outsider in terms of NHL standards. He pulls off this move in his first year in office, gets the, you know, 4th or 5th best player in the entire league. What an absolute slam dunk for him and the Carolina Hurricanes, who we talked about are one move away from performing in the playoffs and getting over the hump. It's funny, we talked about it just a couple of weeks ago. It was a Core 4 story that we talked about, Carolina not being able to get over the hump when it comes to the playoffs. And this could be exactly the type of move they needed, because when you look at playoff stats for a guy like Mikko Rantanen, 101 points in 81 games in the playoffs. This dude is a killer. He was instrumental to Colorado winning. And I just think it was a fantastic move from Carolina to pull this off and to sell high on Necas, who is having the best season of his career as well.
Yeah, and I don't know, Necas is great, but is this an outlier? Like, what, you're taking quite the gamble on this year, and it certainly is selling high on him. He does create a lot of offense, not as much as Mikko Rantanen, obviously, but he has been driving this team and is a reason why Carolina's comfortably in a playoff spot is because of him this year. And yet there's still people saying, you know, Carolina lacks a bona fide star, a stud. They need someone to step up. He's been stepping up all year long, and now he's traded. So that's pretty crazy. And I think that Taylor Hall is being very underappreciated in this trade.
Yeah, overlooked.
Yeah, he's putting up decent points, 24 points or something like that, on a dog shit team. Obviously, like, the advanced analytics don't look good for Taylor Hall right now, but he's playing for Chicago, and he has, you know, the same amount of points production as a guy like Elias Lindholm, Logan Stankoven, Kotkaniemi, Jake Neighbors, Dawson Mercer, Cousins. If Carolina got any of those players in this trade, I know that there's different circumstances for everyone. Everyone would be thrilled about that. So why is everyone still sleeping on Taylor Hall? Like, the last time he's in the playoffs, he had 5 goals and 8 points in 7 games a couple of years ago with Boston. He's still a competitor, and he can still add a lot to this team. And it's just more depth for Carolina. And maybe he doesn't add a defensive aspect to the game, but everyone else does on Carolina. And I'm sure he can just fit that mold as well. So that's a huge part of this trade as well. Obviously, you know, not even in the same ballpark as the other two guys, but stop sleeping on that. And
good point.
To say some good stuff about Colorado, some of the, you know, Jack Drury, I think that's a good depth for them. Like, I think he can flourish in Colorado because he's been kind of sheltered in the depth that is Carolina. That's what Carolina is known for, is depth, whereas Colorado doesn't have the depth. and they have the superstars. So very different teams, these two teams, and I think he'll get a chance and be good. I know it's like an afterthought of an afterthought in this trade, but it's already got a goal in 2 games, so I like that.
Yep.
Yeah, I was just shocked that it was Drury and not someone who has, a little more of a track record, like a Kotkaniemi. I know it would be tough to probably make the money work there, but, we're talking about 2 smart teams here. I'm sure they could have figured it out. I'm just surprised in terms of value why Kotkaniemi was not going the other way, because at least, with him, there's a reason he was picked so high. He's talented offensively, hasn't really reached his full potential, but maybe if given more of an opportunity and given a third line to run himself in Colorado, maybe he could, reach that potential. I was just shocked. Like, you're getting Jack Drury, but to me personally, like, a depth player is a depth player. Like, are there really bottom 6 players around the league who are that impactful? Like, and Jack Drury, like, I know, like, he's a good player, right? And he's on the up, but I just don't think the value was there. You're getting a bottom 6 player, but I don't think he has the potential to be much more than that. Is sort of my point here. Whereas at least if you're getting Kotkaniemi, that you can put him on the power play and you might see some production. You might be able to salvage his career similar to what they did with a guy like Jonathan Drouin. So I don't know. To me, the value just wasn't there.
I'd argue that under the right circumstances, Drury could be just as productive point-wise as Kotkaniemi. From what I've seen.
I'd agree with that. And that is a really tough contract that Kotkaniemi has for sure. And I mean at first, like, when this news started to trickle out on Friday night, Kotkaniemi, by all accounts, was going to be a part of this trade, and I was certainly kind of surprised that he wasn't. But at the same time, I'm like, you know what? Good for Colorado in that sense, because that's a sizable contract for a player who has really had his ups and downs. So if I could just. Yeah, sorry.
I think Kotkaniemi's a better player right now than Jack Drury, and I think if you're Colorado, you're not trying to get worse here. That's the reason you brought back Nakash, right? Like, you're trying to stay good, but also recoup assets for Rantanen, who you're thinking you're going to lose in the offseason, right? Like, that's the whole premise.
I agree with what you're saying. I don't think Kotkaniemi is the way to do that, because that contract is just such a crippling contract.
I get that. I'm with you
on that case.
I get the contract's bad. But I also want to say this. We're clearly all on or of the same belief that we think Colorado loses this trade, right? Because they lose the best player. We should be careful because we all also thought that the Calgary Flames won the Tkachuk trade by a landslide too, right? I'm not saying that Rantanen is going to be bad when he goes to Carolina. I'm sure he's going to be incredible. You've got to wonder how much McKinnon influenced his production, but I just want to say, I think we should be a little careful. I think it's closer than we probably think, even though my personal instant reaction was, oh my God, what is Colorado doing here? Like, I think we just have to couch it a little bit before we get radioed in 6 months.
Let's see what Natchez can do playing with a 130-point player. Like,
exactly.
Like, he hasn't really experienced playing with a production beast like that. Obviously, I mean, they've got great players in Carolina, and they've got a great team like every single year. And Aho has had great production, but no one is Nathan McKinnon. He's the second best player in the world.
And in Carolina too, they play that style. They play that system where, like, you're either in it or you're out. Like, like, there's no, like, dipping your toe into that system. You're either playing that system or you're not on the team. So that hinders some players' scoring ability when you're in that system. And, whatever they do, it just seems like they do it as a group, right? There are no real, like, individuals. Whereas in Colorado, I think they play a much more free-flowing system. And that might lend to Nakash, putting up a few more points than he did in Carolina. So I think it is important that we do say, like, Natchez is a pretty damn good player too, and could go off in Colorado for all those reasons.
Here's where I think that Colorado can win this trade. And I don't like to, put some gasoline on bullshit rumors necessarily. Never been a fan of rumors, but
Crosby going
if
to
Crosby's
Colorado.
on Colorado in the next couple of weeks, Colorado wins this trade, and I don't even care what they give up to get Crosby. Like that's where I was going with that. I don't think that's going to happen. I think Crosby's going to retire at Penn, especially when he has 3 more years on the contract. Like I don't think it's going to happen, but there's people rumoring that part of the reason this trade happened is so that they can free up some cap and bring Crosby in. That would be cool. I mean, I'd hate and love that. I'd hate to see Crosby in any jersey but Pittsburgh, but I would also really like to see him competing for a cup and playing with McKinnon. That would be sweet. Now, talking about this trade sparking another trade, this is where I was going to talk about JT Miller, because I think that there is going to be some absolute panic in the East, and again, in particular in the Metro, that, the percent chance of JT Miller being in the Metro has skyrocketed after this trade, in my mind, because you have to counter this. You need to bring in a guy who can counter Mikko Rantanen, and JT Miller's that guy. Elias Pettersson isn't. I say that there's more value in Pettersson maybe, and Vancouver should hold on to him. But when it comes to countering a trade like this and adding value for the playoff run, JT Miller is the value. So
yeah,
I think there's a chance that Shimon Nemitz is in Vancouver in a couple of weeks and JT Miller is here. Oh, I'm a 2nd overall pick and need to play in the NHL. Okay, try Vancouver. Like they need defense. So
yes, they do.
I mean, I'm before, I think last episode I said no, New Jersey, don't bring in JT Miller. I'm like banging that drum outside TFG's house, just going, bring in Miller.
Yeah. The panic is set in. The Metro's got like, too good.
Mikko Rantanen, shit. Bring in JT Miller.
It's so true, though. Like, this is a year that we thought Carolina was going to take a step back, right? And they've been so good this season, even without Rantanen, partly because Natchez has been so good as well. But now they make a huge add. If you're New Jersey, like, this was your division to lose, really, at the start of the year. And then all of a sudden, Washington kind of comes out of nowhere. But if you're New Jersey, you can't look at this and do absolutely nothing about it. Like, you have to counter. In case, I think JT Miller would be a perfect fit on the ice. I'm not so sure about the locker room, because who knows about all of that. But I think on the ice, he would bring the exact type of snarl that could make for a nasty first-round matchup between those two teams.
Yeah. Oh, we need to bring in a middle 6 forward to help depth support. How about you move one of your top 6 guys down to the middle 6 and bring in JT Miller? Doesn't that just solve all of the world's problems for New Jersey? Yeah. Now, I don't know like Washington's cap situation, but are they now panicking and into the JT Miller talks? Like, doesn't that feel like a perfect fit as well? I don't know if that's possible or if anyone's even talking about that, but I think everyone is going to be panicked because this is such a game changer of a trade.
Yes,
Totally.
It certainly is. And, going back to what you said a little earlier on here, Chad, when we started this, like over the last 4 or 5 years, I mean, it is probably the most high profile trade. Another couple that come to mind, we talked about the Calgary, Florida deal, and that is starting to look a lot better on the Calgary Flames side of things. Mackenzie Weegar's been great since he got there. Jonathan Huberdeau is now looking like Jonathan Huberdeau again, not 115-point Jonathan Huberdeau from a few years ago, but he's certainly playing really well in Calgary finally. And so you look at the Bo Horvat trade that comes to mind as well, and then the Jack Eichel deal also with Vegas and Buffalo. And so, and again, like we said, it is tough and we have to be careful, looking at and picking winners and losers, because, I go back to that Vegas and Buffalo deal. And if you did Eichel for Alex Tuch 1-for-1, it is pretty close. Like, honestly, if you look at the point totals, if you look at the point production of those two players in those two markets on those two teams, it's pretty close. It is.
No, it's just not.
And I'll bring up again. Here's another good reason why you have to be careful with winners and losers. Look at the Ryan O'Reilly deal with St. Louis and Buffalo as well. It took Tage Thompson a long time to break out and give Buffalo a solid piece in that deal, but he certainly has. So we have to be careful in that regard. But
hold on. On those few trades, this has to be said. Ryan O'Reilly won a cup with the St. Louis Blues. That means that the Sabres lost the trade. Okay? Period. That's how it works. Jack Eichel won a cup with the Vegas Golden Knights. That means the Sabres lost the trade. Period. That's how it works.
I understand that, but I'm not.
Matthew Tkachuk won a cup with the Florida Panthers. That means Calgary lost the trade. Period. That's how it works. Like, you get a player that makes your team so good that it puts them over the edge and wins a Stanley Cup. That means you won the trade.
I understand.
So if neither Carolina or Colorado win a cup this year, then is the Matthew Tkachuk Huberdeau trade bigger than this trade?
No, I'm not saying you have to win a cup for there to be a winner or a loser.
No, I'm not. That's not what I'm saying. You're saying. I'm saying. Whoa.
Whoa. That's
whoa. I'm saying that if there's no cup here and there was a cup, like the Tkachuk, Huberdeau, Weegar, like that trade was pretty massive. When you think
that was huge.
Like, think about Rantanen leaving his right, being the right hand man of the best player on the team in Colorado, leaving crazy point production. Huberdeau had 110 points or whatever in Florida. He was the right hand man there. He was the franchise leader in points scored. So that's pretty big. And on the other side was a very high value, hot commodity player in Matthew Tkachuk coming the other way. So similar trade there. And
Natchez is the Tkachuk here, right? And Huberdeau is Rantanen, but I don't know. I just think in terms of like player profile, like Rantanen's done it over the past 5 years, whereas Huberdeau, he was really good, but then he had one huge season, right? So with 115 points, I just think in terms of who has a higher pedigree, it's got to be Rantanen, right? Like at the time of the trade. And that's sort of what I'm going off of when I say this is the biggest trade we've seen.
I agree with that. What I'm saying is, like, if there's no cup for Carolina in the next 5 years, or if Rantanen's gone next year,
then it's a failure.
Very quickly. And that's where I'm going with this, is the hindsight of picking winners and losers of trades. We have to pick a winner or loser of a trade, or we're not doing our job. But
and again,
it's going to change.
No, exactly. And again, like, back to my winners and losers point earlier, I get that the team out of the trade that wins the Stanley Cup is ultimately the winner. I was looking at it through the lens of point production from the players involved on both sides. So looking at it through that lens. But yes, at the end of the day, like, if Carolina gets a Stanley Cup out of this, then they certainly win. And to the point of the fact that they did this last year, acquiring Jake Gensel. They couldn't get him re-signed to a long-term deal. I really don't think that is going to be the case here. I don't think you acquire a player of this caliber without knowing that you're going to be able to have the space to extend him long-term. I just don't think that's going to happen. And so good on Eric Tulsky. Like, what a statement that he has made here in his first year. And we've talked about him before. He is a brilliant mind in the game and has done a great job with Carolina. They've always had depth, but we've been saying it for years. For Carolina to get over the hump, they need that game breaker. And now they finally have one in Rantanen. And on the Colorado side of it, before I wrap on this, I just want to say that clearly Chris McFarland is not done. I understand how Avalanche fans would feel pretty discouraged by this trade, and we lose a top 5 player in the league and McKinnon's running mate and just a superstar. Natchez is a very good player. Jack Drury is a very serviceable player as well. But this signals to me that between now and the deadline, McFarland is still going to try to conduct some more business I don't think it's going to be Sidney Crosby, but it will be somebody that he will look to add into this mix after this trade. So an absolute whopper that we saw on Friday night. And unless you guys have anything more to add, we can grade both teams on this deal.
Yeah, I've got one thing to add, that this is just going to absolutely destroy the market. Like,
Oh yeah.
I saw a post saying that Yanni Gord could get the Seattle Kraken a first round pick. And before this trade, I'm like, what are we doing here?
2 firsts now.
I'm like, yeah, he's probably going to get a first, because every team is going to be panic mode because, Rantanen and Hall coming to a already cup contender.
So crazy. One thing I'll say, Harp, is I think I said Sakic and company. Totally forgot that McFarland's the guy now. That was something that totally slipped my mind. So thank you for reminding me of that. The second thing, to your point that, you think Tulsky and Carolina are going to get this deal done with Rantanen because they wouldn't have traded for him otherwise. I would like to think so, because that's what smart hockey guys do, right? They soft tamper, as the new term that we learned this year, soft tampering, and they figure out what the feeling of the player is, or at least you hope that they're doing that, or else you're just kind of, taking a guess, a shot in the dark. I will say, like, it takes 2 to tango. You hope that Rantanen wants to stay in Carolina, because otherwise, we're talking about this trade as a complete failure for Carolina, because they gave up their second best player and got nothing at the end of the day, unless they win the cup, right? If they go on a run, win the cup, and still lose Rantanen, they still win the trade. But if they lose him in the offseason, he goes back to Colorado and they sign him for 13.9 instead of 14, right? Like, then it's a total disaster. So I hope they're able to get Rantanen done.
Carolina has a boatload of money coming off the cap this year. They're going to have a ton of money to pay Rantanen, and he's buds. He's countryman with Aho. I imagine that he gets re-signed here.
Surely.
I would think so too.
But he has to want to stay there, right? And you hope that him having Aho there is enough to sway him.
How do you feel about this?
Sorry, go ahead, Case.
How do you feel about this trade if Colorado immediately flips that first round pick they received for Yanni Gord or someone like that? Does it get better like immediately? Because what is a 32 overall or 30th overall player compared to grabbing a Yanni Gord for a playoff run in Colorado? I think that has to happen.
I think that's how we have to look at it, right? Because clearly they're going to use those picks.
Yeah,
they're
that's what I'm saying.
So I totally hear where you're coming from with that.
Yeah, it was a second and a fourth that they got with Natchez and Drury. Would have been nice if they got a first in that deal, absolutely. But I agree. I think they will use those picks on another depth add. Yanni Gord is a good name for sure.
That means Carolina got at back-to-back seasons Gensel and Rantanen, and didn't have to give up a first round pick. And we know that they're pretty good at drafting. They always make some good late round picks. So pretty tidy work from Tulsky. Like, just a guy who's doing it differently, and you've got to respect it.
Absolutely. And this is, I think, a big shift in the philosophy of the Carolina Hurricanes. We knew that, a few years back that they didn't like doing deals with rentals, paying big prices, and they wanted guys with term. Well, that has changed over this last year and a half. Jake Gensel and Mikko Rantanen, but here's the one caveat to that: you acquire big name pending unrestricted free agents, and they didn't have to pay an arm and a leg for either player, as you pointed out. So it's a change in the philosophy of the organization, I think, under a guy like Eric Tulsky, and at the same time, they haven't had to give huge returns. So it's a win-win all around for the Hurricanes. And again, they get a player that they just have not had for much of their existence.
And how about that quote from Tulski after the fact, too? A reporter asked him, are you done now, basically? Are there any more moves to come? And Tulski, with a straight face, said, look, until we have the 20 best players in the league on our team at one given time, we're not done. Like, there's still work to be done. So it's like he wants to go out and do more. Like, and something that Carolina never used to do either is, like, they would set a limit for how much they want to pay a guy, and then they wouldn't go above it, right?
Yeah.
I guaranteed they're going to do everything in their power to get Rantanen signed, and they'll probably just give him a blank check. I think it's a different philosophy, like you said, Harp. Without Waddell there, I think, Tulski's got the reins, and here we go. Let's see.
He's absolutely.
It's got to be this year for Carolina, right? I mean, they've fizzled out the last couple of years, going very deep, but just not getting over the edge. And then Brent Burns is going to be up after this season. Dmitry Orlov contract. That's kind of where the bulk of that money I was talking about is coming from. I don't imagine Orlov signs again because you're making 7.75 with the team. They're going to be like, hey, we'll pay you $4 million based off what you're doing. And he's going to go, I'll go to free agency. So,
I'll go to Philly or something
exactly. So like the team's going to look a lot different. That back end we're used to being very good is going to look a lot different next year. So to me, like Carolina's got to do it this year. It makes a lot of sense, and it's going to save Rob Brindamore. He can stick around for longer, even though I think he should, regardless of what happens.
And then looking at Marty Necas, I mean, he's on a 2-year deal, I think making just over $6 million. So next season will be the final year of that deal for him, and there's some team control there. So there's a long-term extension to be had there as well with Marty Necas in Colorado, I would think, especially after doing this deal.
Totally.
Yeah,
is he RFA?
No, he's UFA, but I think...
Oh, thank you. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
26
that,
now.
We got to go back and put some more respect on Necas's name.
Because I
don't know if we've done a good job there.
No.
That's a lot of value in that contract. Having another year at $6.5 million, he gets to prove if he is the guy he is this season, next season, and then Colorado can decide what they want to do with him there. Obviously, he won't be making more than $12.6 million, so we know that. But there's a lot of value in the cap that Necas is bringing there. That's a great contract, great player, 26 years old. It's just a young pup, right? Yep. My birthday's coming up, right? 26 is young.
Very young. Young.
Mikko Rantanen's young, 28. Come on. So
super young.
And let's remember, too, on the Colorado side of things, Cale Makar needs an extension in 2 years. And we know that guy's not going anywhere. And I would hope that he would have or they would be willing to pay him more than McKinnon's $12.6 million for the best 15. Defenseman in the NHL. Like, yeah. So
he is so good.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, fellas, let's give a grade just very quickly for both sides of the ledger here, Colorado and Carolina. Just quickly.
And Chicago, case.
And Chicago, too, if you want.
Okay, A+ for Carolina, B- for Colorado, and B+ for Chicago.
Oh, okay. I'll go A+.
Chicago, what else were they going to do? The team's in a dumpster fire. Just trade Taylor Hall and get value. I don't...
He's Connor Bedard's right-hand man, and you traded him for nothing.
Not even.
He's not Connor Bedard's right-hand
He's not.
Man.
No,
Tyler
but
Tyler Bertuzzi's played more with Connor Bedard
give me
this
a
season.
break. Tyler Bertuzzi. When Connor Bedard needs to go to someone to ask, hey, what is it like to be a first overall pick? He leans on, not Tyler Bertuzzi, he leans on Taylor Hall, and now he's gone.
Is that true?
Surely it's true.
I don't know.
Sure. Who else are you going to go to? You're going to ask...
Text outside of the team.
This is not a crazy take. I think you guys are wild for not putting more stock into this.
It just has to be a veteran player. The fact that Hall was a former number 1 pick is irrelevant. It just has to be a veteran.
Totally disagree. Totally
Why?
disagree.
How
Could-
much
He can
longer
go
was
to
he
Seth
going
Jones, Connor
He's
Murphy.
gonna be there for a couple
he
more
talked
months.
about
What is he
Taylor
gonna do?
Radish last year, how much he helped him when he came into his first year. Like,
Totally
it
disagree.
doesn't matter.
Totally disagree. You
Okay,
need
give
if
Chicago
you're
an F for trading Taylor Hall away.
yeah, well,
Apparently.
trade Taylor Hall, right? If you get more value, make it worth it. If not, just keep him because you don't need any more picks. You don't need another third round pick that's probably not going to hit because your scouting staff can't draft anyway outside number 1 overall. So like it just I don't know. To me, it is an F. I'm giving it an F. Like
All right,
you retain
Carolina and Colorado.
you retained a bunch of salary. You didn't even get you should have got a third round pick just for retaining 50% of Rantanen. Okay? That's the price around the league. F for Chicago.
I was forgetting about the retained salary a bit there. I was doing Hall for a third is a B plus. I'll knock it down to a B minus. I still
There
it's an
we
F.
go.
I think he's got to go. Like he's going to go. What are you not going to trade your rentals and get assets? Like
I don't know. You got to create a culture. You can't have it be another Buffalo festering situation here where they never win games and then all your young players just hate it. Like Connor Bedard hates hockey right now because the
does.
team
He's
sucks.
He's
you know
miserable.
what the culture is grabbing Higgins or Martone or Schaefer. Like
I get okay.
Yeah.
Does having Taylor Hall make a difference on your team? No, you're still going to
apparently
finish.
All he's there for is to be a best friend. Like I don't know.
I think you guys are missing the value that a guy would bring off the ice for Connor Bedard. But anyways, F for Chicago, A plus for Carolina, and I'll go with a B for Colorado. Just because
Okay.
I think you're right, Case. Like we need to make the argument that Natchez is a great player with untapped potential.
Yep.
And if he is freed up in Colorado, he could be amazing.
And let's regrade this when we see what Colorado does with those picks.
That's right.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
They have a second and a fourth that can get you a very serviceable depth player. And I mean, Chris McFarland's been very clear about it. Look at the way that roster looked with all of the injuries at the start of the year. No depth, zero guys we've never even heard of in that lineup. Ivan on their fourth line, or
well, we've heard of him.
Six
I've heard
at one
him.
point or whatever. Like, so they do need to add depth, absolutely. So for me, A plus for Carolina. Obviously, they get a superstar in Mikko Rantanen. I'll go B as well for Colorado. Again, we have to wait and see what McFarland's going to do with those picks. And I do like Natchez, and Jack Drury, I think, has some potential as well to be a very serviceable player there. He's already proved that a little bit in Carolina. And then for Chicago, I mean, they play the third-party broker, retain 50%, and then get rid of Taylor Hall as well. Like, you could have gotten some more value, like maybe even a second round pick, let's just say. So given where they're at, I don't know. I'll go with a C plus, let's say, for Chicago. So there you have it.
They wrote the test. They showed up and wrote the test.
They were the good. You know what? C plus for Chicago, being the good guys here and being the third party broker.
That's your high school transcript. A Harp just full of C pluses. All too familiar with just showing up.
Well, maybe in math, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, me too in math.
Oh, goodness. Well, that was good, boys. Certainly a fiery debate here on a few levels, and it's always fun when that kind of stuff occurs here on the podcast. So anyway, great episode. Hope you as the listener enjoyed this one, talking about just a blockbuster of a deal that we had, pretty far out from the trade deadline as well, which is in early March, and we certainly look forward to that, and we'll have some more trade related discussions between now and the deadline in March. So thank you for listening to episode 228. As always, you can follow us on Instagram at Boys in the Booth, and again, just thank you for your support. We'll chat with you again next week. Take care and enjoy the football.